Lebombo Border BMA intercepts 14 undocumented minors.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. The Border Management Authority has arrested the driver of a minibus they suspect of smuggling 14 undocumented minors at the Lebombo border post between South Africa and Mozambique. Meanwhile, operations have resumed at the Lebombo port of entry following disruption that led to the temporary closure of the border between South Africa and Mozambique. Cargo and travellers were stuck at the border in Mpumalanga following post-election violence in Mozambique. For more on this, we now speak to Border Management Authority spokesperson Meme Mokgotsi, and she joins us now via our video link. Meme, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. Perhaps let's start off here. Maybe if you can just give us a bit of background in terms of how this minibus taxi was intercepted. Did maybe police get some sort of tip-off, or was this purely a discovery that was made by BMA officials at the border?
Thank you, Mbali. As you know that, the Border Management Authority does their officials do their regular patrols at the border environment regularly. So as part of processing, as part of traveler facilitation, minibus taxi approached the port of entry, and as they were inspecting the occupants of that minibus taxi, they found out that there were 5 adults in the taxi plus the driver, but over and above that, there were 14 children that aged between the age of 4 and 16 years. And those children, as they inquired from the driver of the taxi, they found out that they were undocumented. And further inquiry, we realized that they are coming from Mozambique, and they were traveling with the driver unaccompanied because the other adults in the taxi could not verify that they accompanied those children and with the relevant documentation that they needed to have when they accompany minors.
And Meme, do we know where these children were headed to?
At this point, we cannot determine where the children were headed to, but we just know that the children were coming from Mozambique and that there were no documentation that could, satisfy us in terms of where they're headed to, who their parents are. Our regulations require, as traveling of minors, to have relevant documentation, consent from parents, addresses where the children are going, as well as the persons who are going to receive the children on the other side in the receiving country. At this point, none of those documents were there. The children could not be identified. We could only get their ages from them informing us their age groups. Yes.
And in what condition were these children found, and were they aware of what was taking place when they were intercepted by BMA officials?
The children were aware that, they're in a traveling state, but in this regard, what we do, our protocols require us to engage the Department of Social Development in incidents where children are discovered in interception. So that's what we did in that regard. The Department of Social Development came to provide care and support to those children in this regard.
Do we know where these children are at the present moment?
Once we hand over to the Department of Social Development, they follow the necessary procedures in handing them over back to the government where they were traveling from. In this regard, we are assured that the Department of Social Development is normally, involved in this kind of incidents. They know the protocols. They have been assisting the Border Management Authority in terms of managing of minors that are intercepted in these interceptions when we do our operations. So in this regard, they follow the protocols necessary of managing minors. They know how to care for them. They know how to get the relevant information from them. And from that, they need to hand them over to the country that they are traveling from in this regard.
Would you say that, this is something quite common that we see during the festive season where children seem to be traveling on their own and it's not clear in terms of where they are headed? I remember there was an incident once, I think it was last year, where there was a bus of children coming from Zimbabwe, and this time around we see children coming in from Mozambique during the festive season.
Yes, definitely, Mbali. I would say that, you remember the incident that happened last year. But we are vigilant in terms of our ports of entry because even last year as well, we did receive a minor incident. That is why during our operations, even in Easter this year, we were deployed together with the Department of Social Development on the ground, working with them so that they assist with this kind of incidents. So what we want to assure the South Africans is that we have intensified our operations and we're working very hard, and our border guards, with the unwavering commitment that they have in terms of ensuring that, our borders are secured. And in the campaign that we're at now, the 16 days of activism, we wouldn't want to have our borders utilized for these criminal acts, and especially targeting vulnerable persons like women or children. So we are adopting a zero tolerance approach towards this, and we do not want anyone to be smuggled or to be subjected to any incidents of criminal activities in this regard.
And when it comes to the situation at the Lebombo border post, I mean, it has seen a lot of post-election violence, and there was a time when it was closed off, and there was no travel between the two countries because of what has transpired in Mozambique. How would you characterize the situation now? Has the congestion eased somewhat? Are travelers able to move to and fro from the two countries?
In this regard, in Bali, we've been experiencing an on and off situation where operations are suspended in the Mozambican side, compelling us on the South African side to also not be able to operate or suspend operations. But what we've experienced in the past week is an on and off of, port operations resuming, port operations being halted. If I would give an update, like this morning, we were able to process travelers that were walking on foot, but we're not able to process any cargo. And later in the day, the operations were halted because tensions were intensifying on the Mozambican side. But what we are doing now is engaging with our Mozambican counterparts and ensuring that we get the latest updates in terms of what is happening on the ground on the Mozambican side so that we are able to activate our systems on the South Africa side. Yes, we are aware that there were some social media postings that were done. In this moment, at this point, we are meeting as port management committee members to ensure that, updates are provided to us and giving guidance for us to whether operate or whether to suspend operations temporarily. But these have been, the operations have been suspended temporarily, and they continue resuming maybe for 2 or 3 hours in a day, and then they continue being suspended again. But these activities are based on the Mozambican interruptions on the other side.
And Meme, I mean, Mozambique is quite a common holiday destination for many South Africans, especially now during the festive season. What is your advice to those, hoping to travel to Mozambique and those also hoping to travel to South Africa? Can you give them any advice for this festive season?
In this regard, Mbali, you'd know that South Africa does not have a problem. So anyone needing to travel to South Africa, they are welcome anytime. Our port operations are functional anytime unless there are interruptions on the Mozambican side. But now what we are cautioning anyone at this moment is that they need to take care and they need to take caution as they've made plans maybe a while back, and they had planned to travel to Mozambique. So the operations, the port opens and the port temporarily suspends operations. So there needs to be at least, ear on the ground and guidance, be alert in terms of information that comes from BMA, that comes from SARS, in terms of what the situation is on the ground. When the port is open, colleagues, travelers are able to cross through to Mozambique, but we are saying they must just take caution in terms of the traveling on the other side of Mozambique, because in South Africa we don't have any issues. The issues are on the other side in Mozambique.
All right, Meme, thank you so much for your time, ma'am. That is Meme Mokhotsi. She is the Border Management Authority spokesperson, just giving us an update there in terms of that interception that was made earlier today, and of course, just the situation on the ground at the Lebombo.
Thanks for watching the Daily Buzz. Please subscribe to get news, sports, and music first as a subscriber.